Rain of Troy hotline.
Alicia, Michael, what's going on?
We know you have takes. We have takes.
I'm actually surprised that your Rant Line, Rave Line, whatever, isn't completely full.
Why can't we just win a game?
Can I blame Michael Castillo for this?
Can I blame Bob Connolly for this?
Could I put on a zebra shirt and just go out there? Scratch, claw, up against the wall.
Can't explain it what I'm feeling right now, guys.
I can't believe it.
Let's open up that race line! Woohoo!
Oh, I can't believe USC is undefeated in the SEC. Wait, we're in the Big Ten. What's our record? Oh, no!
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Rant of Troy Radio, episode 598, coming to you on Wednesday, May 14th. We're going to talk about the latest in USC football, including a big decommitment that has happened. But mostly today, we're talking about the USC Notre Dame rivalry and what the future holds for it. As always, you can follow us on social media at Rant of Troy. Email us, rantoftroy@fanside.com. Phone number 818-643-7227.
Suck at What's Burn Show.
I'm your host, Michael Castillo, joined along with my co-host here in the Rant of Troy studio in Los Angeles, Alicia Dertola.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. We are back. I think this is going to be a sad episode for you.
Why is that?
Well, you know, it's something near and dear to your heart. As a Notre Dame alum.
Well, you know what's near and dear to my heart? Your microphone working.
You know what I realized it was? My microphone had literally fallen, so it was like aimed at the desk. Right.
I'm sitting here as the intro starts, going like,
I'm listening. I'm like, it sounds weird,
wrong,
right?
but
Yeah.
I
was thinking it was just my ears.
Yeah, same.
Okay.
I was fiddling with my thing until I spoke, and I was like, well, my mic sounds exactly like it normally does.
All right. We're gonna do the awkward thing for video listeners. You can get a little inside baseball here. We're gonna restart the opening so that way the audio only listeners will never know that this happened.
This is why you watch us on YouTube,
yeah.
for this behind the scenes content.
Exactly. All right, here we go. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Rant of Troy Radio, episode 598, coming to you on Wednesday, May 14th. We're going to talk about the latest in USC football, including the potential of the USC Notre Dame rivalry. It's come into question. We're going to discuss that at length today. Big decommitment on the recruiting side of things, and so much more. As always, you can follow us on social media at Rant of Troy. Email us, rantoftroy@fanside.com, and our phone number, 818-643-7227. Suck at What's Burn Show. I'm your host, Michael Castillo, joined along with my co-host here in the Rant of Troy studio in Los Angeles, Alicia Dertola.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. I haven't said that at all today. Like, we're just going right into it. I think this is one of those podcasts where I think we're just going to, jump in and get rolling right from the beginning.
I
right?
think we're about to pitch a perfect game.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
Alicia, I think this is going to be a sad episode for you, of course, because we are going to discuss something near and dear to your heart as a Notre Dame alum.
As a Notre Dame high school,
same difference.
High school alum,
same thing, same logo, same song. I mean, the logo is technically a little bit different. I will say that the real Notre Dame logo much better than the Notre Dame high school logo.
You dogging the Notre Dame high school logo?
Yeah, because the serifs aren't the same.
Which logo are you referring to? Are you referring to the athletics logo or the
one with the rounded D? I don't like the rounded D.
Oh, okay. Again, these are things that I don't pay attention to. Like, for instance, how we were having breakfast with my mom and dad for Mother's Day, and we brought up that Pope Francis's tomb at the Vatican has some weird kerning to it.
Yeah.
Which is something I never would have noticed, but you pointed it out, and now every time I see a photo, not that I see a ton of photos of that, but like every time I see it now, all I see is the big gap between the A and the N.
Yeah, it's like Pope Francis. Yeah, it's terrible. Anyways, big ups to Pope Leo, by the way, from Chicago.
American Pope.
Even though, unfortunately, he's aligned with the wrong baseball team in Chicago. Unfortunately, we've learned
He is a White Sox fan.
Yeah,
But I do like the jokes about how it's true proof that he is a man of faith, that he could watch the White Sox and still believe in
and
God.
the Bears.
And the Bears.
The Bears. Yeah. Anyways, let's just get into it. Let's talk about SC and Notre Dame. There's growing concern about the future of the rivalry because rumblings are not good. Not good. The current contract between the Trojans and the Fighting Irish expires after 2026, which means there's just one more home and home contractually as it stands right now. So this coming October, which the game time was just announced, by the way, for the October game. I'm pretty sure that SC's SID department has that press release pre-scheduled every 24 months. It's gonna the game
shocker.
time for SC Notre Dame is gonna be 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 Pacific on NBC, WNBC.
USC and Notre Dame are going to play at 4:30?
Yeah. At 4?
At 4:30?
4:30? Yeah. Wait, hold on.
What time did you say we were eating at 4?
4:30 on WNBC. That'll come up in October, but as it stands now, this is SC's last official confirmed game in South Bend. Obviously, we've been here before. Like 10 years ago, the contract got renewed for another 10 years. So by the time that you listen to this, who knows? Maybe the thing will be renewed going forward. But at least to talk about the latest rumblings of what's happening and why there is sort of concern, because it's another USC rival, Clemson, that is suddenly becoming a player in this whole thing.
Yeah, that's why. I mean, this has been a talking point for a couple of years now. When USC hired Lincoln Riley, it became clear immediately that Lincoln Riley was not enamored with the idea of having to play Notre Dame every year and the difficulty that brought to the schedule. So, why now? Why are we talking about this now? And the answer is that Notre Dame just finalized a 12-year home and home with Clemson. And that home and home, it's very clear that that is not something that they intend to go just 12 years. Notre Dame's athletic director told one of the Clemson sites that he wants to create another great and memorable rivalry that can last 100 years. So they clearly intend to renew that beyond 12 years. And that rivalry begins, that series begins in 2027, which is the first year that Notre Dame doesn't officially have USC on their schedule. So immediately Notre Dame people were, speculating that, is this the replacement game for USC? And a friend of the pod, Greg Fleming of the Irish Sports Daily, I saw one of the tweets that he put out that it was the quote from the Notre Dame athletic director about having this 100-year rivalry, and his response was Notre Dame versus USC is cooked. And I totally get that, because the signals are all there. To make matters worse, this week Tim Prister of Irish Illustrated confirmed that and to quote him, the USC series is legitimately in jeopardy. We know that Jen Cohen has made comments that have certainly opened the door for the possibility of USC removing itself from this rivalry because of the logistical challenges of Big Ten travel and Notre Dame travel. We know that Lincoln Riley has said things like there have been a lot of teams that have had to sacrifice rivalry games. We know that this is sort of what's going on in college sports and college football. And we know that this is a possibility. As much as we don't want it to even be a possibility, this is the kind of thing that I wish, somebody would just come out and say, yeah, no, this is not happening. Just black and white, it's not happening. But we haven't gotten that. And we haven't gotten enough indication from USC side that this is not being considered. And there's enough anxiety from the Notre Dame side for us to have to acknowledge that this is seriously being considered. To which I say, shame on USC and every person who is even considering this possibility. This would be one of the most embarrassing things that USC has done in my lifetime. And we know we've done 10 years of a podcast of USC doing embarrassing things. This would be the one that, to me, I think USC has done embarrassing things in ways that, people screw up. People screw up all the time. It just, people screw up. That happens. And USC screws up a lot more than we want them to, but I can accept it when people screw up. This possibility of this happening is such a betrayal of what makes USC special, of what makes USC unique, of the competitive spirit that USC has or is supposed to have. It's a betrayal of everything that USC is. And, years ago, USC scheduled an FCS team, and we sat here and said, we hate this because we want to believe that USC is exceptional, and USC playing an FCS team makes them not exceptional. And eventually, pushback about that got that changed, and USC did not play an FCS team and maintained its status as the only college football team in Division I that has not played an FCS team. And, that FCS thing is minuscule in the grand scheme of things compared to USC Notre Dame. This is 1,000 times worse if USC goes through with this. 1,000 times worse than scheduling an FCS team. I would accept scheduling an FCS team from this year to the end of the universe if that was what needed to happen in order for USC Notre Dame to remain in existence. I'm on a soapbox, so Michael, stop me if I go on too long.
Keep going forever.
What I hate about this is this idea that you're going to sacrifice a rivalry game for the sake of logistics because you don't want to travel or you feel like the burden of travel is too high. Well, then don't join the frickin' Big Ten. Don't do it if the burden of travel is too high. If that's going to be the cost of it. Don't act like you didn't bring this on yourself by joining the Big Ten in the first place and creating a situation where you're going to be traveling to Purdue and going to be traveling to Maryland and going to be traveling to Ohio State and all this and all these other schools. This is a self-brought on thing that USC has done, and they're gonna cut off the Notre Dame rivalry because of it. And I fully accept. I totally understand there will be USC fans who rationalize this and say that USC doesn't need Notre Dame, which is true, and say that Notre Dame could fix this by joining the Big Ten, which is true, and that that Notre Dame is as much at fault for this falling apart as USC would be, which certainly there's fault on both sides if this were to happen. But in the end, it sounds to me like Notre Dame is open to continuing to schedule USC, and if this rivalry falls apart, it will be because USC decided that it cannot stomach every other year traveling to South Bend, Indiana, when every year they're going to be expected to travel to Columbus and or Ann Arbor and or the Maryland or Penn State or whatever it is, that this travel burden is going to be too high. And the point of the travel burden being is that it will affect the product on the field, right? So you don't want to be traveling because all of that travel makes it harder for you to win games. And if it's harder for you to win games, you will lose more games, and thus you lose a competitive advantage. To which I call bullshit. Because there has never been a period in college football that it was as advantageous or not a eliminating factor to have multiple losses. This isn't 2008 where one loss on the road can screw you over for winning a national title that you absolutely could have gone on to win. This is not 2008. This is the era of the 12-team playoff. And by the way, there are a million indications that are pointing us in the direction that this will be a 16-team playoff before long. As soon as they can possibly make it 16, it will be 16. So you're telling me you're going to sacrifice one of the greatest rivalries in sports, not just college football, but in sports, because logistically, you don't want to have to put the wear and tear on your team that could result in more losses in a period when, unlike any other time in the history of college football, you can afford to have 2 losses. You can afford to have 3 losses. Heck, in a 16-team playoff, you might be able to afford to have 4 losses if those losses come on the road to Ohio State and Penn State or whoever it is that you're playing. So don't tell me that it's like, oh, USC doesn't need Notre Dame to go win a national title, that this is all in service of winning a national title. No, if you are capable of winning a national title, then you shouldn't be afraid of traveling to Notre Dame, and you shouldn't be afraid of traveling to Ohio State, and you shouldn't be afraid of traveling to Michigan. If you can't beat those teams and test yourself at the top level, then you're not going to win the national title anyways, if you're not good enough to withstand that schedule. So, if you're if you're a 5-loss team and you don't want to be a 5-loss team because something about, college football playoff or whatever, well, that it doesn't matter because you were already not an actual contender at that point. The whole idea right now should be building USC up to the point where they could withstand any schedule that was put in front of them. And I know that, I've spent a large portion of my life talking about like SEC teams overrate their schedule and all that kind of stuff. And I will stand by a lot of that. But the fact remains that if you look at the schedules that Alabama or Georgia or most of these SEC teams have to go through every year, the gauntlets they have to face 4 or 5 top 10 teams. And we can have a discussion about, rankings and overrating and all that kind of stuff. But like a standard SEC schedule includes as many of these tough games as we're talking about from USC in the Big Ten schedule. Having Notre Dame on the schedule is what makes USC exceptional. Having Notre Dame on the schedule is what tests USC's mettle every single year. Because to me, if you are a championship caliber team, then you prove it by winning against Notre Dame. You prove it by going to South Bend and blowing them out, which is what USC has done. And it has been that moment of like, no, USC is real. This is, USC will play anybody, anytime, anywhere. I grew up in the Pete Carroll era. If you ask me, the Pete Carroll of my youth at this point would be scoffing at this idea right now. Absolutely scoffing at the cowardice of not being willing to do the hard thing, which we should all accept. Yes, playing Notre Dame is hard. USC makes it harder on themselves every year by playing Notre Dame. This is fact. But that is not a bad thing. That is how you build championships. That is how you build your ability to contend, by putting yourself up against everybody who is good and will make it hard on you. You don't get to the top of the mountain by taking a shortcut. You have to climb, and you have to do the hard things. And in the end, you're better off for it. You're better off winning a national title and also having a game against Notre Dame on your schedule than winning a national title and imaginary doing that while saying that we're just going to throw away one of the things that makes us special and us unique. I am not the person who looks at the current state of college football and says it's all falling apart and everything is terrible and college football as we know it is going to rot and all this kind of stuff. Like, I'm not that person. Anybody who listens to this podcast knows I'm not that person. But I will say that about this. This is one of the untouchables. This is one of the things that literally matters. And it mattered when Texas A&M and Texas stopped playing. And it matters when all of these schools play or don't play. These rivalries matter, and every one that we lose makes the sport worse. But all of the ones that have been lost before, every single one of the rivalries that we've lost because of conference realignment, losing Stanford and Cal, teams in the SEC, Big 10, Big 12, everybody getting split up, all of these things, they pale in comparison to what USC Notre Dame is. USC Notre Dame is special. And you want to talk about logistical challenges. That's the thing that makes USC Notre Dame special. It's never made sense. It has always been an illogical and difficult rivalry to maintain. That's why it's so special. Because back in the day, you had to take a freaking train ride to get to South Bend. And you're telling me that now when travel is as easy as it's ever been, now this is the time that we're going to say, no, we got to give up Notre Dame because we got to give up Notre Dame. Like, no, this is, it sickens me. I hate it. Maybe I'm jumping the gun here. Maybe tomorrow we'll find out that USC and Notre Dame has had their rivalry renewed for another 10 years. I certainly hope that's the case. But I have a sinking feeling in my stomach that when we hear rumblings and whispers and all this kind of stuff to this degree for this long, that there is truth to that. And I worry about how much truth is involved in that. And quite frankly, I told Michael, this is what we're talking about today because I need other people to be mad with me. Because we know that it works. We know that the FCS thing, somebody got mad enough to make that change. Somebody got mad enough to make the calls that convinced people not to do the stupid thing that undercuts the exceptionalism of USC. So I hope I'm not the only one who's livid about this possibility. I hope I'm not the only one who's sick to my stomach about the thought of this coming through, of this happening whenever it happens. And I don't know, I'm at a loss because, I think that fans, we have very limited influence. Certainly me, I'm not a $100 donor, let alone a, multi-$1,000 donor. We don't have $100 to give to USC right now. I know a lot of people listening at home, we can't, most people are not in the sphere of influence that could make this kind of thing change. But if there was a groundswell of USC fans who said, no, this is not acceptable, then maybe this could be prevented. And this could all just have been a hypothetical that I ranted for 30 minutes about, which is what I hope it ultimately does. I hope that other USC fans recognize the loss that it would be to accept the death of one of the great rivalries in sports. I'm out of steam. And I have nothing left.
That was good. It was very good. But before I hop in here,
hey,
big shout outs, of course, to Tim in LA and West Texas Mike. Tim says, inject Alicia's rants directly into my veins. West Texas Mike says, I'm going to match the energy of Tim in LA on this.
Thank you guys. I appreciate you guys. You guys are do a lot to support us, and we greatly appreciate everyone who gives super chats, who listens, who even just participates in the chat. I hope that I'm not alone on this. I don't know.
I have thoughts on this. I feel like I am a walking piece of cognitive dissonance. I'm not saying that I'm for getting rid of the rivalry, because I'm not. Do not ever twist that I'm for that. I'm not in 1,000 years, right? What I will say, maybe this is just a cynical view that I have because this has been the death of college football for the last 15 years as we know it, based on what we grow. And it's also interesting because they say that sports, when you grow up, is how you expect sports to always be, right? Like, I think Colorado is a powerhouse because when I was a kid, they were a powerhouse, right? Mm-hmm. Like, that kind of stuff, right? The game in the 90s was way different than the game was in the 70s. The game in the 2010s, way different than it was in the 90s. And so, like, in a lot of ways, these things are natural. Ever since the 80s with the lawsuit that Oklahoma had that allowed the schools, the conferences to run the TV rights, that sort of paved the way for a bunch of stuff. You had the expansion of the SEC and the Big Ten in like 1991 when the SEC grew with like Arkansas and South Carolina, and then Penn State joined the Big Ten, and Arkansas was in the Southwestern Conference for the longest time. And if you're like an SC student now and you've never heard of the Southwestern Conference, that's where that's where Texas was, because Oklahoma and Texas were not in the same conference. All the Texas schools plus Arkansas were in the Southwestern Conference. And then that blew up in like 1994, 1995 when the Big 12 came together, which used to be the Big 8. And then you end up with the expansion, 15 years ago now, when you talk about the growth of the Pac-12 from the Pac-10, and then Nebraska going to the Big Ten, and then Rutgers and Maryland, all this stuff. I think it all leads to this, right? Because on one hand, the precedence has been set for teams to get rid of their rivalries, schools to stop playing their rivalry games based on money, right? Like, it all comes down to money.
Back to money. Yeah.
It all comes down to money, right? Like, the reason that the Southwestern Conference ended was because of money. They could make more money in the Big 12. The reason that the Big 12 drastically changed its makeup over the last 5-6 years is because of money, right? The reason the Texas A&M rivalry ended was because of money. Texas A&M thought that they could make more money and be bigger and have a better stature in the SEC. And like, they were right. They do make more money in the SEC. But also, it's sacrilegious that Texas and Texas A&M stopped playing. It was sacrilegious that, quite literally, that Utah and BYU stopped playing for a few years, right? Like, all these rivalries that stopped. Well, the one that I think pisses me off the most might be Notre Dame, Michigan. Those two schools tied together for 100 years with tons of drama, tons of history. The only reason that Notre Dame is not in the Big Ten is because Notre Dame feels as if there was some anti-Catholicism, from Michigan 15 years ago from Coach Yost, and they didn't join the Big Ten because of it, and they've never joined the Big Ten sort of out of spite because of this, and it's like, this all would have been solved if they just joined the Big Ten, right? And then now the Notre Dame half joins the ACC so they can get their cake and eat it too, and all that kind of stuff, right? And so Notre Dame gets rid of Michigan, but they keep SC and Stanford. Why? Well, because they wanted to end the season in California every year for recruiting purposes. And Stanford going the ACC helps that for them, because now that counts as one of their 5 ACC games a year, however many ACC games they have to play a year to be a fake BS partial member of that conference, right? So I think it makes a lot of sense from a Notre Dame perspective to break this rivalry more than anybody, just based on what they've done before. They got rid of Michigan so that way they could focus on Stanford and SC for recruiting purposes to come to California. Okay, in a situation where as the playoff stands currently, Notre Dame has no chance to get an automatic bid, which means of all the schools who can afford to have 3 losses, Notre Dame is not one of them, right? And so I think it makes logical sense based on the I'm not saying it makes sense based on what we love college football about. I'm saying this makes current meta sense, if that makes any sense to you. For Notre Dame to be like, hey, let's go all in on a big rivalry with Clemson. So Clemson and Stanford will be our official rivals, but they will also count to the ACC games. So then we can also, have more control over our schedule. And now we play FCS schools. And so now we have the ability to stack the deck and make sure we go 11-1 at least every single year, right? If you're Notre Dame, I understand the thought process of that to guarantee that you're in the playoff every year. Like, that makes logical sense. From SC's perspective, I see the logic. I understand. The Big Ten and the Pac-12 used to do this, but the Big Ten and the Big 12 play 9 conference games. The SEC plays 8. And so when you add in Notre Dame there, you're suddenly at 10. You're at 10 power conference games and Big Ten quality games, because you include Notre Dame. Notre Dame should be in the Big Ten, right? Essentially a Big Ten team, but just not actually. And so now you're playing 10 games compared to a school like Alabama and Georgia, and all them are, for the most part, maybe Georgia's the outlier because they have a rivalry in the ACC that's connected here with Georgia Tech, and so does South Carolina and Clemson. But those schools, like Alabama, are playing like 9 power conference teams a season. So to me, so much of this would be solved if we had some sort of central college football power that mandated that every team plays 8 or 9 conference games, because if every conference played 9 conference games, then SC playing Notre Dame wouldn't be the perceived burden that it is now, right? Yeah. Does that make sense to say?
Yes. Yeah, and that thing that you're talking about, that sort of overarching guide to is how you fix a lot of things in college football, but this specifically, yes.
But specifically, if every conference played 9 games, or if every conference played 8 games, I don't care. I really don't care. Pick a number. 8 games might even be cooler because then you get more variety with other teams around in different conferences. Whatever it is, if you mandated that, even if you mandated that you have to play 1 FCS game, whatever it is, if there was just some sort of standard across college football for how schedules have to match a checklist, then SC playing Notre Dame every year isn't an additional burden, perceived burden at least.
Which, by the way,
from the SC perspective,
if they wanted to mandate an FCS game, I'm actually all for that.
I mean, I've always said that they should make
it should be a preseason game.
It should be a preseason game. You go to 13 games. You sell the games to season ticket holders at maybe a slightly bigger discount, but you do the things that the NFL does, where the season ticket holders have to buy the preseason game, right? So you have a game, and it's SC plays Cal Poly in the middle of August. It's a preseason game, but you've sold all the tickets and all that kind of stuff. It helps fund the SEC, the FCS schools. And it doesn't count. It doesn't count for stats. And so you don't have to work. I think the problem would be a bunch of teams would lose that game, right? And then people would freak out about it. But you see this in basketball all the time. How many times have you seen Kansas loses to Concordia or whatever bullshit, right? You see this all the time in October, because in basketball, every team plays a D2 team or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Anyways, that's all beside the point. I guess what I'm saying is, given the meta of college football and with the money, and how I think as much as it kills me for the historical nostalgic feel that SC is in the Big Ten because it feels wrong, and they should be playing teams like Cal and Stanford and Washington State and Oregon State. We should be going to Corvallis all the time, like, because that's what the SC football is that we grew up on, and our parents grew up on, and our grandparents grew up on, and all of that stuff, right? Like, as important as that is, like, I obviously understand that the reason that SC is in the Big Ten is because of money, and the Pac-12 didn't have the money, and unfortunately, money is what makes the world go round. As much as, like, that sucks for a lot of million different ways, literally, this is the world that we're in. And so, like, I totally understand all of this. Like, I see, well, yeah, like, this would happen. Yeah, because this is just, unfortunately, sadly, depressingly, maybe it's me dead inside. Like, well, yeah. What did you expect, right?
Yeah.
But that doesn't make it feel better.
Yeah.
Because SC Notre Dame is what should always be. And it's a rivalry that I know is important to me. I know it's important to you. I know it's important to people in our chat. I know it's important to the Rotbots. I know it's important to people on the P, people who go to SC games, SC alums. We've always talked about the UCLA game is maybe more important to the students, but the Notre Dame game is more important to alums, and I think that is the case. But this is a special game, and you're right in that this rivalry has never made sense logistically. So, like, why should logistics matter now when you can fly and all that stuff? Yeah, I think that's a totally valid point. At the same time, in a very basic sense, it is insane that SC could theoretically play 5 games in the Eastern time zone in a given season.
Yeah, but if you want
Like
it
that-
bad,
like that's just-
if you want it
but-
bad enough, you will do it. Like, for
No,
instance,
100%, yes.
the Chargers and the Rams this year are each gonna fly 30,000 miles
Yeah.
in travel. They're all gonna, and the NFL is sending teams overseas
Yes.
to Europe,
Yeah.
to Spain and Germany and England and Brazil.
But they are also playing teams in their divisions six times. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But my point is that, like,
They're also not students.
100%. But if you want something badly enough, you'll make it work.
100%. That goes with everything.
And for me, the Notre Dame, as I've said, the Notre Dame game is hard, and I get why there might be a sentiment of, like, oh, do we have to do this? But that's why it's special. Like,
yeah,
that's why it matters.
No,
because USC could have reasonably decided that this was not worth its trouble 10 years ago.
Well,
10 years before that. 10 years before that.
Realistically, when SC played the soft West Coast card and moved the South Bend trip to October, literally 60 years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably when the series should have ended. Like that would have been the logical point to end the series. Yeah. If you're going to complain about going there in November, then you should just not go there. Period. Like I could understand that thought process, and then it would be a footnote of, like, hey, did you know that SC and Notre Dame had a rivalry like 60 years ago? Yeah, that's crazy. And then you never think about it. But that didn't happen. SC and Notre Dame committed to each other. Notre Dame was like, cool, like, you want to avoid the snow? That's fine. We'll continue because this is important to us too. And that is special because if that would have happened in 2011, that wouldn't have been the case. Like, if the landscape of college football from 2011 would have been in effect in 1960 whatever, when McKay was like, hey, we're not going to go there in November anymore. If that same mentality would have existed, same money-focused mentality and all that stuff, the rivalry would have ended, but it didn't. Right?
Hey, and if USC needs to go to Notre Dame right now and ask for a concession or two in order to continue the rivalry, I would imagine that they could get something done. I saw somebody mention the idea of permanently move the game to week 1 or permanently move the game to September, so that it's not because one of the problems is that USC's Big Ten schedule, that 9-game schedule, is restricted by every other year.
Yes.
Or by always having a game
in
October and a game in November, having, it complicates life for scheduling for USC. So if you treated it like an actual out of conference game that came in the first, 3 weeks or week 1 or whatever, then maybe that's a potential solution to make it less of a grind.
It would also be a solution to a potential loss affecting your poll status. Your rank at the end of the year.
Because if you go early, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, screw it. If people want to do a damn neutral site game, there's got to be somewhere that they could find that logistically. Let's play in Vegas every year. I don't know. There's
only one neutral site place where they should play like thematically, and that's Chicago. And Chicago's. If you're going to go to Chicago, you might as well go to South Bend. I've always thought that in 2027, that the game should be at Soldier Field. Realistic, it should be.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Yeah.
I also, maybe there's a financial thing. Maybe USC says we want a bigger piece of the pie.
Maybe you find a sponsor.
The USC Notre Dame rivalry presented by, Vizio. I don't know.
Yeah.
By Cybertruck. At this stage, I do not care. No, I will sell my soul to Elon Musk to keep.
Okay, let's.
Have we officially jumped the shark yet? Jumped the shark yet?
Yeah.
Okay, so Randy in the chat asks, have you heard anything on the proposal that would put all D1 football under one television contract that would do away with the need for super conferences? I have not heard anything specific about this, Randy, but I will say I find this hard to believe because when we talk about money controlling college football, what we really mean is ESPN and Fox control college football.
Yeah.
They are pulling the strings, and ESPN and Fox have created they've split it down the line. One of them is SEC, one of them is Big Ten, and everybody else is just sort of like swirling around the two giant entities. And in order to come together to create one television contract, you would need those two sides to concede something to each other, and I just
not
don't
necessarily
see that
though, because I think they've already conceded. Because I think
they've drawn their lines.
They've drawn the line of this is ours, that's yours. Let's just continue mutually assured destruction here of whatever. They've drawn in a sense, they're not necessarily competing in a global sense. They're competing on a weekly basis.
They're like
instead.
they're like the telecom companies, T-Mobile and AT&T and all them. They're so big at this point that they just they exist.
They're Pepsi and Coke. They're competing, but also they're competing, but they're not competing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like people have already picked their sides or whatever. People are where they are. They can coexist. All those things. I have a hard time seeing how that would happen, how that would work and benefit anybody. But the big teams. Because if take the Pac-12 for example. If this was the case and they were all on one TV contract, well, back in the Pac-12, you have in any sort of conference, you have parameters. And you have set quotas. You can't be on this channel X amount of times. You got to be on this, whatever. Every team had to play at least, what was it? Was it 3 Pac-12 network? I don't remember. It's been.
I think you had to have a minimum of 2.
Whatever the number was. There was a minimum. And sure, you could theoretically have those things under one giant contract. But why would you? In that case, if you had one giant contract, you would put Alabama and Penn State and Ohio State and SC and Oregon and Texas and Florida State, all the big money schools, you'd put all of them on primetime forever, and you'd have Oregon State and Washington State play on a Tuesday night like the MAC. You know what I mean? Am I overthinking? Basically what I'm saying, nobody is arguing for Oregon State and Penn State. Oregon State and Washington State there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So theoretically that would work. But again, that only works if you have a central power system. And why was the Big Ten and the SEC going to concede any sort of power? They wouldn't, because the SEC and the Big Ten are only going to concede power to each other as a power duo, right?
Yes. Yeah.
They're not going to give up any sort of their power to the Big 12 or the ACC. And logically, why would they? The only reason that you do that is for morals and nostalgia. And as much as we all want morals and nostalgia to rule everything, and it would in an ideal world, it doesn't, right? Like, if it did, Utah and BYU would play every single year, and so on and so forth. Like, none of these rivalries would have broken if that was the case, right? Oklahoma and Nebraska would play every single year.
Mm-hmm.
They'd find a way, and then Oklahoma would never have to play Tulsa on, September 5th every single season or whatever, right? Like, because you just play the teams that you wanted to play.
Yeah.
But it's not a video game, and money, unfortunately, rules everything, and
it does.
It's like it's depressing. It's depressing, and it's sad, and all these things, and I don't know how to fix it other than Notre Dame pulling their head out of their ass and joining the Big Ten.
Well,
but you can't make them do that, especially when you could look at it from the Notre Dame perspective. Why would you join the Big Ten?
When you can have the ACC.
When you have the perks of of independence, and you are still, sleeping with the ACC on the side.
Yeah.
And you're getting the best of both worlds.
Yeah. You have no reason to put a ring on it.
You have no reason. None at all. With the exception of the only reason for Notre Dame to join the Big Ten
is if they're given an ultimatum that will leave you forever.
The reasons to join the Big Ten for them in a practical sense is you would return all your rivals to being played yearly.
Yeah.
Purdue, Michigan, SC would all be annual rivals, and you'd play them every single year.
Yeah.
Indiana, you'd probably play Indiana a ton too, and that'd be an in-state thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, it would return a lot of their natural historic rivalry.
Yes.
But financially,
this is,
I don't know that that's the best decision for them, and so that's why it doesn't get made.
Yes, and that's why, the solution to this is something that I recognize is an unreasonable ask in a landscape that is ruled by just dollar signs. And dollar signs are ultimately the end all be all of this college football landscape and beyond. But in terms of this landscape, that is the reality, and I recognize that. But the solution is for somebody to recognize that dollar signs don't have to be the end all be all for every element. Yes, the money matters because your program doesn't exist unless it has funding, and your program, exists to win championships, and you don't win championships unless you have enough money to do so and to pay, your staff and be up with the cutting edge of everything, and also pay your players, pay your directly NIL, all this kind of stuff. So money, I'm not saying that money shouldn't matter, but I am saying that there are certain things, just like in life, there are certain things that you should value more than the money you can make back for it. You showed me a TikTok the other day about Chewy, the dog food brand, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And the TikTok was about how, Chewy, you have a subscription where they send you your dog food, and what ends up happening is people's dogs die, and they have to eventually go to Chewy and say, cancel my subscription because I don't need the dog food anymore. And Chewy has a policy, and that policy is to, without question, refund the last bag of food that they sent you, and then cancel your thing, no problem, and then they send you flowers, condolence flowers, saying I'm sorry for your loss or whatever. And the whole idea behind that is that it doesn't matter that you've lost a subscription. because there's a humanity to that response. And the cool thing about it too is that the humanity in that response ultimately helps the business, because then you build brand loyalty and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. That's the idea behind like Costco.
Loss leaders, yeah.
Yeah, this is literally Costco's USC Notre Dame should be the damn Costco hot dog. Actually, straight up, this is my new pitch. If anybody hasn't heard this story, and it's been out there for a while, but like, this is the story. The CEO of Costco is they're all about efficiency, and they're always trying to just sort of like whittle it down to be the most efficient so that they can get the prices down the most and create the best deals for the people that shop there, because they want to fuel memberships, and memberships are where they make their money, and so it matters that they provide things at a value because they need people to just be walking into their store, right, and keeping their membership. Costco has loss leaders like the chicken, the rotisserie chicken. Costco is not making any money on the rotisserie chicken. Costco is making money on getting you into the store to buy the damn rotisserie chicken and then inevitably buy other things.
Yeah.
But Costco's food court has always had the $1.50 hot dog and soda, and that price has not changed in probably decades at this point. I'm not sure when that came in, but there was somebody in the company suggested raising the price on the $1.50 hot dog and soda. And the CEO said with an expletive something like, absolutely not.
Well, I will effing kill you, I think.
It's like, I will effing kill you if you raise the price of the hot dog. And the price of the hot dog and the soda have remained $1.50.
Yeah.
And Costco finds ways to make it work by, like, Costco will buy the plant, the factory or whatever that produces the hot dogs so that they can reduce the cost of producing the hot dogs so that they're not losing as much on a $1.50 hot dog. And they accept the loss on the soda, which, by the way, sodas cost any place that is selling you a soda pennies on the dollar.
Nothing kills me more. I never sound like a boomer more than I'm like, really?
$4 soda?
They're calling Denny's is charging me $3.99 for a soda.
Yeah,
it cost them 12 cents.
Yeah, exactly. But like the point is that Costco recognizes that there are some things more important than profit, and Costco has decided to an extreme degree that the effing hot dog and soda is more important than making an extra 50 cents on every hot dog and soda that they sell.
In part because the profit that you don't make there, you make up other places, right? Like
exactly.
Like the Chewy thing. Yes, it's very human and it's very, it's humanitarian. It's empathetic and it's all those things, and that's all great. It's wonderful. We love that. You want companies to be like that. At the same time, you can look at the most cynically way possible is they are pulling your heartstrings, right, that that you're now never going to leave Chewy because of that, right?
Right, but but they don't have to do that, and they'd still probably get you back if you got another dog and you already had the convenience of if they're already giving you a convenient product.
But if I'm going to be manipulated, make me happy and when you're
manipulate me as a human. I mean, I'm manipulated by Costco every damn time. Like I get manipulated into buying things in bulk that I don't need to buy in bulk because Costco makes it worth it.
And we're going to finish our trip with a pizza. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And so they're making, it all comes out in the end. I think my point is USC is not, in the end, whatever sacrifices USC is making to keep the Notre Dame series alive, those sacrifices are not harming USC in the long run. USC is not without a conference title for the last, one conference title in the last 15 years because of the Notre Dame series. Like that's not the issue. USC didn't go 7-6 last year because of the Notre Dame game. USC has had seasons ruined by Notre Dame, but USC has turned around and ruined seasons to ruin Notre Dame seasons as well. Like that's the nature of it all. But from a bottom line perspective, the Notre Dame series is not the problem. There is not a problem that actually exists because of the Notre Dame series.
Yeah, this is going to be the 14th season of the pod coming up. we have never seen SC win in South Bend in the history of the pod.
It's dire.
Crazy. Yes. But a lot of that is, they played a bunch of good Notre Dame teams in that time. But I think you can make the argument that the best teams that SC played that Notre Dame had were at home in those years. Probably the worst ones too.
This batch of USC teams hasn't been that good by comparison.
They don't win the 2013 game because SC wasn't a good team.
Yeah.
They don't win the 2015 game because SC wasn't a good team. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not just because of whatever. But one point I want to make before we move on and get to recruiting stuff and then wrap the whole thing up is that you said that, I think you made a really good point, that Notre Dame is not stopping you from winning a national championship, in the sense that if you're truly a national championship contender, then you should be able to beat Notre Dame more often than Notre Dame anyways, right? That's
your team could be better off for having played Notre Dame and lost to them.
See Ohio State last year.
See Ohio State, Michigan, exactly.
Yeah. And Oregon last year,
yeah.
I agree. The only place I push back on that, and I'm not saying I agree with this, I'm saying that this is I would play devil's advocate. That I think that the cynical SC perspective on that would be, yes, your national championship teams, your 2004 team, your 2005 team, the 72 Trojans, 78, those teams were going to beat Notre Dame no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
But then you look at the teams like 2007. Obviously, 2007 beat Notre Dame. Ignore that part for the crux of what I'm trying to say, right?
Yeah, the ones on the cusp.
If you're a team on the cusp, like nowadays.
But nowadays,
Notre Dame could stop you from getting to the playoff,
right? But if in a 16-team playoff, if Notre Dame is stopping you from getting to the playoff, you were never winning a national title, anyways.
Yes, but here's the thing: you were maybe never winning a national title, anyways. But I think and this sucks that I'm even saying this, but from a strictly cynical, financial, greedy perspective, I think you can make the argument that you can run a more financially successful program
by getting to the
playoff 9 out of 10 years than getting to the playoff 3 out of 10 years but winning the championship.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Whereas I think the fans would take the championship and 3 playoff runs over 9 playoff runs with no championship. But I feel like the bank accounts would take the 9 playoff runs. Does that make sense?
Yes. Oh, yeah. I totally get that. Kenny in the chat asked, does 2017 USC make the playoff without the Notre Dame loss?
Yeah.
And you could argue they do.
Yeah.
But I will push back on that and say, is 2007 USC the team that they are at the end of that season without the humbling experience of losing to Notre Dame that way? And or does a 2017 USC team that doesn't play that Notre Dame team go to the playoff and then get smacked around because they have not been humbled or have not had a reality check or an awakening?
Yeah, and I think those are valid questions to ask, because like from a fan perspective, is it worth making the playoff if you're going to get the doors blown off anyways?
Well, I mean, this is the Notre Dame question. I mean, this is literally Notre Dame's history.
Yeah.
Notre Dame making it to the title game this year was the culmination of two decades of being just good enough to make the playoff and then get pantsed, like in every game that they ended up playing.
Right.
And is that what Notre Dame sort of wants to be? I think that Notre Dame would rather be in the position that they are now, where they could get to a playoff.
Mm-hmm.
Where they could get to a title game going through the playoff stretch.
Yeah.
But
I'm going to say, by the way, if SC doesn't play Notre Dame and say SC swaps out Notre Dame and plays Utah State, right? In 2015, 2017. In other words, they play a Mountain West team that they're going to win, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't like. Specifically, I don't know that this is literally Kenny's the spirit of Kenny's question, but on a very specific sense in 2017, I don't know that SC actually gets in, because you look at the rankings at the end after the conference championship games. It's Clemson, Oklahoma, Georgia, Alabama. Those are all one-loss teams. SC would be right there also, but does an 11-1 SC get in over an 11-1 Alabama or Georgia? I don't necessarily think so.
I will also play some devil's advocate and suggest that if USC doesn't have the Notre Dame win on their schedule in 2016, do they get chosen for the Rose Bowl? If USC doesn't have the Notre Dame win on their resume in many of these seasons when resume has mattered, does USC get treated like Washington had gotten treated for a long time, as the team that had played nobody?
Yeah. I think that the gain is there. Absolutely. The gain is there. And
I think that's ultimately my point. I think there is more to gain spiritually, football-wise, legacy-wise. I think there's more to gain from playing Notre Dame than not playing Notre Dame.
To me, the only...
Does Caleb Williams win the Heisman without his what he did against Notre Dame? I think I think it's a good question.
Totally. I guess if we want to go butterfly effect completely, is the Utah game that week instead of the Notre Dame game, or because the entire schedule changes, right?
Right. Yeah.
But I think it's a valid question to ask. I tend to think he does, but maybe he does. It's not a for sure thing like it ended up being, right?
Yeah.
All these things are valid questions. Also, if the Notre Dame game is in week 1 and Caleb does that in week 1, do people still remember?
What if the Oregon State game is that?
What if the Oregon State game is that week before? Yeah. Like all these things sort of affect everything. This is why I think the schedule release matters way more in college football than the NFL. Eye roll inserted right here. All these. Those are all our thoughts. Joe in the chat said that Notre Dame does not. It's not the best of both worlds for them being in the ACC and independent, because they don't get to play in a conference championship game, and the setup for the playoff doesn't allow them to have a top 4 spot. Yes, I agree, but that's literally the only negative that Notre Dame has right now. And
I would argue,
aren't they getting rid of the protected seeds? Isn't that one of the at least bare minimum suggestions as well?
I would suggest. I would bet that the 16 team that Notre Dame has some sort of situation where they work that out with.
But also, if you're Notre Dame, you can thread the needle like they did last year.
Yeah.
Get the home game. You make more money that way. Yeah. Like there's obviously you still have to play that game. You still have to beat Indiana, but I would argue again. I would argue that Notre Dame's stubborn clinging to independence is as built on sentimentality as my stubborn clinging to the USC Notre Dame 100%.
And, I think Notre Dame is an example of Notre Dame has decided that their independence is more important than the ease of life, in relative ease in terms of like the logistics and all that of life in the Big Ten, because Notre Dame believes itself to be exceptional, and Notre Dame views its independence as a critical part of their identity. And you can agree or disagree with the wisdom of that. Yeah. But I will say I get where they're coming from when they say they don't want to be just another team in a conference, because they have been independent for so long, and they have and this is what they are. I would say the same thing about this is what USC is. They are a team that gives up an out of conference date in order to play one of the greatest rivalries in sports.
Yes. I do think the exceptional thing is funny, because when it's your team, yes, we're exceptional, and there's all these things. Yeah. When it's somebody else talking, you're like, this is the most circle jerky thing of all time. Like, prime example is you and me in every discussion that has to do with
Liverpool and Chelsea. Yeah.
Because Liverpool is so freaking insert wanking motion here over how much they love themselves, and like how
but I would argue that Liverpool
should think
are
that way.
an exceptional club
Sure.
and do have an exceptional, exceptional vibe to them.
Yeah. Also, Notre Dame fans would be like, actually, one of our biggest negatives is that we have high academic standards here at the University of Notre Dame, and that's the reason why we can't recruit better. And it's like, yeah, bullshit. We all know that that's not what's stopping you from not winning national titles. If Notre Dame was in Carrollton, Georgia, instead of South Bend, Indiana.
Oh my God, yeah.
Like they would be getting the 5-star DTs from Georgia.
Yeah.
Even with their academic standards. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, no.
Yeah.
No, let's not go there.
Yeah.
All right. Let's hit the news really quick and then we'll wrap this thing up. All right, Alicia, the sky has fallen. It has begun. The great USC class of 2026 has started to depreciate a little bit, slightly. Well, bigly potentially here. 5-star Xavier Griffin, has decommitted, according to Antonio Morales of The Athletic. USC and the top-rated player in its recruiting class, 5-star linebacker Xavier Griffin, has parted ways. USC is pretty firm in its stance that it wants to commit to be all in, meaning no visits elsewhere, and Griffin has his visits lined up. Alicia, I think this leads to a very interesting question, is where do you stand on the no visits policy? Because I think you can make a case for and against rather easily with this, right?
Yeah, I understand the case for. I'm not gonna say that I don't. That I think there are valid arguments on both sides of this debate.
Yeah,
we can start there. I understand the idea that you want a certain type of player. You want the loyalty of a player. You want a player who is really dedicated to being with you. And we've said this for a long time. And anyone who follows recruiting, one of the most annoying thing is like a commitment should be a commitment. If a commitment should be like an engagement. Mm-hmm. And if you are engaged and out there like flirting with or going out with other people, then you're not actually like committed, right?
Right.
But that's not the reality of college football. Like that's just our understanding of what a commitment is has always just been like our definition is the problem in the end. Unless you as a school are creating a definition, which is to say, if you are committed to USC, you are not being recruited by anybody else. Yeah. Which
I don't know how practical that is.
And this is why while I understand the sentiment, I think this is an unpractical and ultimately counterproductive policy. Now, the only thing I wonder is, and it's counterproductive in the sense that you lose the commitment of Xavier Griffin, who you were always going to have a hard time holding on to, but you've basically driven him away. You've basically guaranteed that you don't even have a shot at him because of this. And there will be other recruits that this becomes an issue for. Mm-hmm. And there will be some who are perfectly happy to shut down their recruitment and don't want to do visits, but there will be others who want to do visits. And denying them that ability to do visits, if you were confident in your ability to close, this wouldn't be a problem. I do wonder, and this is just something that I don't know if I have the details on or a good enough understanding, like hands-on understanding of how all of this actually works, because to me, it's just also partly new and partly just like this is all in the shadows and not discussed publicly. USC is only getting these commitments because they're giving some financial commitment to that. Like there's NIL deals that are being negotiated, right? There's a reason why USC's recruiting class has ballooned into into the numbers that USC has, which I think is still like 25. It's 27. there are certain players who would simply not be committed unless USC had committed to them financially in some way. And I wonder what those contracts look like. I wonder when that financial commitment comes into play. I have heard that, at least I heard that like last year, the Georgia guys that USC got committed wanted basically like a retainer. To which I would say, if I'm USC and a Georgia kid is asking me for a retainer while they're committed, when I know there's every likelihood that by signing day they will flip to another school and I will have wasted my resources trying to keep them committed. Like, I understand being wary of that kind of thing. Of
Sure.
If you are going to sign the paperwork and take our money, then that's it. You're done. It's like in the NFL, if you're a free agent, when you sign the documents, you're with the team. You don't get to just flip. There would be a financial penalty for you flipping around and saying, no, actually, I want to go, play for the Rams instead of the Bills. So like, if we think of it that way, it would make some sense to me. I just don't have clear confirmation that is actually what's in play here, that is actually part of the equation, that there wouldn't have been some sort of financial element to USC having a very stringent policy here.
Yeah, this is one of those things where, like, again, a lack of a central body. I mean, and this is one thing that the NCAA does have some sort of power over, but not much because of all the NIL stuff and the uncomfortable position that the NCAA is in, of stripping back so many of these things where they've just created, by putting things in the open, they've just created more areas for dark market stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Randy in the chat says SC encourages the recruits to take all their visits. Just don't commit until you're sure you want to be a Trojan. Yeah, I think that's great, and I think that makes a lot of sense, right? Like,
but like, I wonder, is there a signing bonus?
Yeah,
is there a commitment bonus? Like, and I don't know the answer to these things. I wish I did. I did. So much of this is just obscure and unclear. And
nothing that, like, obviously Lincoln Riley can't talk about these things.
Yeah,
because the money doesn't come from the school; it comes from the NIL, right? Like from House of Victory or whatever, right? Like, and that is not the school, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I guess
the whole thing is,
my hope would be that this policy is relayed to players well ahead of time.
Yes,
because the problem here,
if that's the policy, that you're only going to commit to me if like
when you are ready to not talk to any other schools.
That's
then
how you have
commit.
this policy, right? Like, if that's what it is, then great. Like, that's how you have this policy.
But like, don't take a player's commitment unless you have confirmed with them.
Yeah.
Straight up, like, you are comfortable with not having it, and we know that this has worked with other players because we've seen a bunch of other players who have shut down their commitment, have shut down their recruiting, at least for now. But this is the problem with doing any of this with 17, 18-year-old, guys. Like, they might change their mind. People change their mind at any age, but especially at that age where you're making a massive life decision. You got a million different voices in your ears, and changing your mind about whether or not you want to go see another school.
Yeah.
If it costs USC your commitment, if it costs USC the chance to sign you, like, I feel, and I might be wrong like this, but I get the vibe that the door is now closed for Xavier Griffin. Like, that's a problem.
This is the irony too. Like, and this is just a recruiting thing in general. It's a very, self-interest thing. And this is for everybody, every school, every fan, etc. But like, the irony of, like, you never want your commitments looking elsewhere. Oh man, you'd love to flip somebody else.
You'd love to flip some. Yeah.
Notre Dame commitments. Yeah, let's go after those guys, right? Like, they can cheat on them as long as I don't get cheated on, kind of thing, right? I look at it too a million different ways here. I see the argument either way. If this is a policy that's going to just, it make sure that those who are not in are just not in, and then if that's making it quicker to just not be in, then that gives SC the pathway to replace those guys. And that's later on. You'd rather have him decommit now,
yes,
than a day before signing day.
I guess
you don't want a Jalen Ramsey situation.
No, and I think the problem here is that we just don't know. The policy on its face I don't like, because you end up in a situation where you can lose a recruit that you would have been able to keep potentially because you drive them away by being stubborn about this. On the other hand, if you were going to lose Xavier Griffin like you lost the two linemen from last year, I'd rather it be now than in November, after you've spent, 6 months committing time and effort and all that. And I know this isn't college football where you're like putting, 60 hours into a player or whatever, but
you are.
You have limited recruiting staff, and even USC has expanded its recruiting staff very heavily, but you still only have so many hours in a day for those people to put their attention on players. And if you are devoting attention to a player that you are destined to lose, then this policy could be a way that you speed up that process and weed out those people that were going to leave you anyways. Yeah. The problem is, I fear that you will end up throwing some babies out with the bathwater.
Sure.
And unfortunately, I don't know that we will ever be able to confirm one way or another which one
Not
like
until
this would have
30
been.
years from now,
until we find out, I totally would have
tell-all.
committed to USC, like that kind of thing. So, but this is also like losing Xavier Griffin is also a really good reminder of why it's been very important that USC has been so aggressive about recruiting California, because losing Xavier Griffin is bad. Like I'm not going to spin it as a positive. He's a really great player, but USC has other linebackers in this class that they are already have made headway with or have a commitment from or all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Where you are far, far, far less likely to lose them and then have to end up in a situation where USC has been in the past few years, where it's after signing day and they're scrambling to find any player that's available at the position because they don't have enough guys at the position. And then they take a bunch of defensive linemen that are, not of the level that USC needs, or a bunch of offensive linemen that are not of the level that USC needs,
Yeah, and that's a perfect segue. The other linebackers who are local to talk about 4-star edge Sean Scott out of Mater Dei. 6'3", 230. He's rated 293 in the 24/7 Sports. Is that where you got that?
Yeah, that's the composite.
Okay, gotcha.
This time I did the composite because
I've committed to 24/7. I'm sorry, I'm not calling it 247.
Yeah.
We committed to them as the standard for what we're looking at, just to for like a decade now, right?
Yeah.
But it's so frustrating, the difference between their rankings and the composite, and how sometimes the composite takes precedence, and sometimes their proprietary ranking, and it's like very confusing sometimes. So yes, 293 in the composite. That's what we're looking for more than anything. Edge rusher, linebacker, could be on ball, could be off ball. He's someone who could sort of fill that void. Xavier Griffin, maybe not a literal sense, but like in that general sense of where he could play on the field.
Yes, he seems to have a great amount of versatility. He's a great pass rusher, but he's not just an edge. He's sort of a player that doesn't necessarily have a defined position yet, and we won't know what defined position he will end up fitting into until he gets to college and you sort of see where he's at with that, which I'm fine with. I love a bit of versatility. The other big thing about this for me is that, it is important for USC to reestablish certain pipelines that have not just been not fruitful for them, but like actively hostile to them recently. And Notre Dame is one of those. And having 2 players from Notre Dame now committed, Mater Dei committed, is, I think, a really good sign, a really positive sign. So that's there's more to this than just the player that USC is bringing in. It is important that USC is mining Mater Dei specifically for talent. There are a bunch of other schools that are, Oaks Christian is one of those. I don't know if Long Beach Poly is still any good, but those kinds of feeder schools that USC has maybe lost touch with a little bit, that you have to rebuild the relationships. And I'm happy to see the Mater Dei relationship seems to be on the mend.
Yeah. Quick thought on Sean Scott before we move on. High on the Michael Index. Well, one thing that hurts his Michael Index rating, of course, is the number 24 as an edge / linebacker. Like, weird. Not a fan. But the photo he's got on 24/7. He's got a Shut F7, the jagged robot, and the clear reflective visor. Chef's kiss.
Michael approves of these.
Chef's kiss. Now, mind you, if you'd have told me that he was a DB, I'd be like, this is a perfect look and number and everything. So maybe not my preferred look for a linebacker, but in general, it's hitting all the points.
Who knows? We could be looking in a year and saying, oh yeah, he's surprise, it's going to be a safety. I don't know. I don't think that's his future, but
he's wearing a godforsaken Zenith helmet, which of course was always the biggest crime that Shedeur Sanders had ever committed, is wearing a freaking ugly ass Zenith helmet. All right, 3-star linebacker Taylor Johnson from Cajon commits. 6'1", 200. 3-star guy, developmental prospect, right? But 895th nationally in the overall rankings and the composite wise. This is an interesting one for you though, because you're sort of big in on. I did not mean to do this.
Big in on Greg Biggins?
I swear to God, I did not mean to do this. You're big in on what Greg Biggins has said.
I just love, usually what I try to do when we have, we're putting commits into the rundown, I try to go into 24/7 and see if they have a blurb like about the blurb, like a scouting report. And I try to pull the most interesting or the most like compelling or the most important bits from that blurb. I pulled the entire blurb from Greg Biggins because every single word of this has me hype. So this is how Greg Biggins describes Taylor Johnson. Johnson is a highly productive linebacker who can run and hit. From a frame standpoint at 6'1", 205 and play style, he reminds us a little bit of Oregon linebacker Jeffrey Bassa. He's an inside backer who can flash from sideline to sideline and get downhill in a hurry. He has a nice edge to him, and you can tell he's the kind of player who embraces contact. He's physical at the point of attack and is looking to run through the opposing ball carrier. He does a nice job of getting off blocks, moves well laterally, and looks very comfortable in space. He lays out anyone who crosses his face, brings a certain nastiness to the field that you love to see. He's not going to wow you in terms of physical traits, i.e. size and athleticism, but he is a player who should be productive at the college level, and it won't surprise us if he ends up being a multi-year starter and future captain.
He makes me drool.
I'm just saying every single word. And Fight on Natty's in the chat says the linebacker from Cajon has looked more impressive on video. Yeah, I haven't done a lot of like visual scouting myself of him, but I trust Greg Biggins' eyes more than I trust mine personally. Yeah. And I absolutely love when in these blurbs, Biggins or any of the guys who do these evaluations talk about kids with edge, kids who embrace contact, kids who are physical, kids who have like nastiness, and especially kids who...
especially because Gen Z nowadays, right? Am I right?
I love if Greg Biggins or anybody says that you look like a future, that you come off as a future captain, especially when we're talking about a linebacker, I am sold. I am very sold on the mentality. I think that one of the things that you have to get right as a program, because not everybody is going to be a Xavier Griffin. Not everyone's going to be a 5-star athletic talent. You make up for it by finding guys with the right attitude who play above their size and athleticism. Matt Grudegoods, as it were.
It's funny because when you were describing this, I'm like,
Matt Grudegood.
This is vaguely Matt Grudegood.
Yeah.
I don't know that I call Matt Grudegood like a hard hitter or whatever, but like this vaguely sounded like Matt Grudegood to me. Yeah.
I love a guy who is that they play above their physical traits. That is something that I highly value. So
yeah, and it's funny because when we talk about like comps that Greg Biggins has put out there, I always go back to Greg Biggins' comp for Sewer Cravens was like a combination of Grudegood and Palomalu. And like I don't think he was wrong.
No, I don't think he was wrong.
That was like the
that might have been like the fact that you could make that be the combination might have been the problem for Sua, which is again like he just was too much of a hybrid kind of guy. But
I'd love to know what Matt Grudegood looks like today, in like him as a recruit, right? Like
where would he rank?
Where would he rank? Because I think there's a world in which I don't know that he would be as highly regarded in the sense that the Matt Grudegood types are in terms of versatility and in it's relatively normal now.
His playing weight and size was 5'10", 212.
Yeah, well, yeah, but the physicality stuff, like he obviously like get lower marks for the physicality stuff, but like what he's doing on the field, especially playing on both sides of the ball and all that kind of stuff, like is I'm not going to say it's normal because it's not normal. Like Shohei Ohtani's not normal, but like
right
at the high school level, it's not that rare. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like Sir Cravens is a running back in high school. Like that's pretty normal for your superstars.
Normal to play on both sides of the ball. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know. It'd be interesting. I worry that his size wouldn't allow him to play today, but all the better reason for why he played in 2002, 3, and 4. You know what I mean? So, Fight on That, he says Clay Matthews wasn't physically impressive when he got to SC. Yeah, he was a walk-on for a reason, right? Like, you that's one of the all-time great developments that I think SC has put together, and that we've seen in college football, really, right? Like, was J.J. Watt a walk-on too? Wasn't he?
That sounds kind of right.
I want to say that he was like he walked on at Central Michigan, and was going to play hockey, but then he ended up playing football and then transferred to Wisconsin. Am I crazy? Am I misunderstanding that? I don't know.
No, okay. He had a scholarship, but they wanted him to play tight end. And
that's why he leaves Central Michigan.
And then they wanted him to move to offensive tackle, but he left Central Michigan and walked on at Wisconsin because he wanted to play defensive end.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I knew the term walk on and Central Michigan. I knew both those terms were in his Wikipedia page somewhere.
Wrong direction. Yeah.
All right. That's gonna wrap things up. Other guys have been shutting down their commitments or recruitments, which is in line with what SC wants to see, and we'll continue to see how the 2026 class develops. We've got a lot of stuff planned for you guys here in the off season. We were just sort of formalizing some content thoughts today that we're super pumped about. So we'll be getting into those. Also, we have some big podcast announcement news coming up. I'm not sure when we can discuss those things.
I don't know either. I am completely in the dark on our big podcast. I'm aware of what our big podcast news is, but I am completely in the dark about when we will be able to share that. So
yeah. So we have to do a little bit of research into that. So new graphics and everything is coming up as well. So we're excited about those things. Last thing, we did get a message at the beginning that I want to get to here.
You've got mail.
Off topic. This comes from Cameron, from Frisco, Texas. Who do you think is going to win Survivor? If you're not caught up on Survivor, now's the time to bounce.
Well, to be fair, we're saying this before Wednesday's episode of Survivor has aired.
Yes.
So if
we might sound really stupid if you're going to listen to this on Thursday.
It's entirely possible that I will sit here and say that I think Kyle is going to win Survivor, and then Kyle gets voted out this week. Whatever Kyle and Camilla are up to backfires, and then he gets the axe. I think there are 3 realistic possibilities at this point. Maybe 4. Maybe I'll stretch it to 4. I think that Kyle is getting a winner's edit. I think that Joe and Eva. I actually think that Eva is getting more of a winner's edit than Joe is. I was talking to you about this, Michael. That I think that Joe is running the game on his sort of vibes and personality, but we are having the game narrated to us by Eva and by Kyle. And I think that Shaheen at this point has a chance to go very far. I just don't feel like we've had enough of his perspective for him to be the winner. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry I'm doing such a meta analysis, but this is the way I watch TV. So I think it's Kyle, and if it's not Kyle, I actually think it's Eva. I
love this season. This season of Survivor is so fascinating because we can go. We have long thoughts on this, and I won't go into everything, but I think this cast is tremendous. The season has absolutely stalled the last couple of episodes, but the cast is so good that they're down to the final 6, and there's not a single person I don't like. And I think you very simply could root for each of the 6 people left. Having said that, I want Kyle or Camilla to win. I think it would be great if the final 3, as much as I would love Camilla to be in there, I think if the final 3 was Joe, Kyle, and Shaheen, give that to me. Because that I think would be interesting TV. As much as I would love Eva to be there, because I think that would be fun to watch, and Camilla might overall be my favorite player, and I would love to see her in there. I want to see Joe defend his game against Shaheen, who's a speech professor, and Kyle, who is a lawyer. The final tribal council will be fascinating. And I think Eva has a great story. I don't know that she would fare well in a tribal council against those 2. But also she might not need to. She might not need to fare well in the tribal council because it might not need to be about the argument that you make, right? I don't know. This is why you watch Survivor. This is why you watch reality TV. All this stuff. There's a million reasons to root for each and every person left. So it's going to be interesting. Ron already says hoping for Mary, but she screwed herself over the last few. Yeah, I think Mary doomed herself in a lot of ways. Mary and Say, I think, got in their own way. So, yeah. Final Nanny says, I always wonder what kind of people watch these programs. So you're looking at them. You're looking at at 2 of the people right here. So.
Yeah, you're looking at people who also watch Big Brother, and that is far more embarrassing than watching Survivor.
I don't want to get into this because I could go on for hours about this, but there's a lot of Survivor people who are very over Survivor, and this isn't good. New Era Survivor sucks. I miss Russell Hands and all these villains and back when it was Cutthroat and all this stuff, and that's totally fine. Yeah, sure. I can't necessarily disagree with you, in part because I watched Survivor a lot the first 7 or 8 seasons, and then I stopped watching for whatever reason. I don't even know why I stopped watching. Mm-hmm. And then I have now been back in for the last 5 seasons, and it is so obvious. As someone, I am a diehard Big Brother fan, and have always been, and got you into being one as well. it is such like getting into back into Survivor. It is so clear how Survivor is Nordstrom and Big Brother is Five Below. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
no, okay. So this is the thing that I think that has been said about Big Brother and Survivor by people who like both Big Brother and Survivor, and I think it stands, and I think it is 100% true. Survivor is a better television show. Big Brother is a better game.
yeah, I think that's fair. But okay. Big Brother has the chance to be a better game. And
that's the problem, because it gets the fact that CBS is producing a certain kind of television show detracts from the game of Big Brother.
Yes, and your way of putting this lately has been, it's very obvious that Survivor is produced by people who love Survivor, and Big Brother is produced by people who don't actually like the game. Don't actually know what the show is. They don't actually care about the sanctity of the game.
Big Brother,
or any of those things.
The people who are in charge of Big Brother literally only care that Big Brother exists. And the thing about Big Brother, and we were talking about this the other day, is that Big Brother is the easiest show to exist. It literally exists to fill time. It's a filler. It's a filler show. It's a cheap filler show.
In the summer,
competition. There's no competition.
Yeah.
It's extremely inexpensive to put on. They don't have to think about it too hard. They just edit it, get it up, and roll. Where Survivor, it's very clear that they care, that they are creating a good product, and that they think about the game and how to improve the game for the sake of improving the game. Where Big Brother thinks about how to throw a new twist so that they can put on a commercial, something that is a twist that might get somebody to accidentally tune in to an episode of Big Brother.
So a couple of comments in the chat about like Lamont says, I watched Survivor as like Lord of the Flies for real. Who could really survive? I've got a show for you. It's called Outlast on Netflix. Dead ass. What you're wanting is Outlast on Netflix.
Go watch Outlast. And Lord of the Flies is such a good comparison.
It is the first season of Outlast is, I watched it all in one sitting because I was mesmerized. And then it was one of those shows where I watched it in the middle of the night and then woke up and told Alicia she has to watch it now.
Yeah, and then I went, I think it took me like 2 days, which for me is very quick.
The basic concept is it's Survivor with fewer competitions and no vote. It's no voting out. It's just...
You just choose to...
You choose when to fire a flare for the rescue team to come in and get you.
Yeah.
So
initially it's like
16 people could last forever if they wanted to.
Yeah.
But it doesn't happen that way because you get people shooting their flare on day one, and then you get people who last way longer, and then it becomes essentially literally a blood sport at one point. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, the psychology of that show was immense. I really enjoyed that. That is most certainly not what Survivor is, but I will say that I think that Survivor is a very interesting, certainly old school Survivor. They're much nicer to the players now in terms of the actual level of survival stuff that they have to accomplish.
Yeah.
But even now, they are, there's a lot of people who are just not eating, not sleeping. And to me, the survival aspects of Survivor have become much more mental, in the sense of, how do you manage a social strategy game while also being hungry and tired and cranky and hot?
Mm-hmm. And
I think that is, on its own, I think that's actually an interesting thing, because people who have been on Survivor, some of the podcasts that I listen to, they talk about how, like, the most difficult thing, you think you can play Survivor from the comfort of your home because you are in your probably closer to peak mental state. But after a week of sleeping on bamboo and eating only coconut, your patience level for anything drops.
Yeah.
Your ability to process anything drops. Like all of those things, it's a mental strain that I find to be very interesting. And you can start to see which players it is starting to bug and which players aren't. Like, for instance, this season, not to completely go off on complete tangent, but like there were a couple episodes there, Michael, where we didn't see a lot of Camilla, and she had these deep bags under her eyes. She seemed like she was listless, and then she got taken on a reward and got to like eat, and since she went on that reward, she's looked human again. Like, I don't know if you noticed that, but like I made that observation. I was like, yeah, this is a sign of like it wears you down mentally.
Yeah, a lot of wear and tear and all that stuff. But yeah, go watch Outlast. If Survivors is too soft for you, go watch
Outlast is not soft.
It's not soft
I will
at
tell
all.
you. We talked about like Survivor is made by people who love Survivor. Big Brother is made by people who are just feeding the cash cow. Outlast, the people who made Outlast.
According to the Wikipedia page, don't look at the Wikipedia page because there's spoilers, but there's just 8 rules. One of them includes you cannot physically harm each other, but it doesn't say anything about like you can't physically harm somebody. But there's a lot of gray area.
There's a lot of other ways that you can make people suffer, is what we learned. And I guarantee you that the people who made Outlast were not prepared for what they got.
The first season is to the point where like I was watching it and I was starting to wonder if there was like legal repercussions for what was going down. Literally, like I was thinking, like, is this legal? I don't know. Like, crazy show. Go watch it. So, all right, that's gonna wrap us up. We'll be back next week. We got a lot of stuff coming, cooking, all that stuff. So we will be back later. Thanks for always listening, whether it's on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, on Apple Podcasts or wherever. Leave us a review and all of that. And love you guys, and we'll see you next week. Until then, see ya.
See ya.
See ya.